Hello and welcome, KD7QOW here. It's a blustery, cold and rainy day in the middle of March. In other words, a typical Pacific Northwest spring day. And I figured that this is the perfect kind of weather to show off some changes that I've made to my mobile setup. I've seen a lot of setups online for how people do this in their pickup trucks. That's a pretty easy install to do, to be honest, because a pickup truck is an easy car to add accessories to. They have a frame, they've got a lot of space, there's almost always places to mount things, and so I'm pretty jealous of the truck owners. But I own a Subaru, so I think that's a little bit more in line with the types of vehicles most of us own, especially if you are a suburbanite like I am and you have no real legitimate need for a pickup truck, even though you might want one. So I'm going to show you some of the things that I did to get this to work in the Subaru. It's a little bit different just because a Subaru, like most cars, is a unibody vehicle and there aren't as many places to mount things, and it's not quite as easy to just find space to put stuff. I was hoping to accomplish a couple of different goals with this setup. One of them was, of course, to be able to operate the radio from the inside of the car. But the other goal that I had was being able to operate the radio from a separate power source and be able to have that power source charge off of the car when the car is operating. Now, if I was using a lead acid battery, that would be pretty easy. You just add an auxiliary battery and a battery isolator. But it's a little more complicated using the LFP, the lithium ferrite phosphorus, lithium iron phosphate batteries that we're all using now, because those batteries require a different kind of charging system. They can't just be run off the same charging voltage that's coming out of the alternator, which means that you need a separate battery charger, and that also means that you need to fully isolate that battery from the rest of the electrical system while it's charging. So you really can't run the radio off the battery while the battery charges. So I had to come up with a way to power all of my radio equipment off of the alternator when the car is operating, when the engine is running, and then switch it over quickly to operate off of whatever lithium iron phosphate battery I've got in the back of the car when the car is off. I really don't want to be running the radio from the starter battery. That just seems like a bad idea, and I don't think that's a controversial opinion. So here I am at Fort Vancouver, and this is a National Historic Area, I think it's technically what it's called. It's like managed by the National Park Service. It's like 3 miles from my house. I'm so lucky. But it's run by the National Park Service, and it is a POTA entity, so it's a Parks on the Air entity. So I'm just parking the car here, and I'm going to show you what my mobile setup looks before I go ahead and start activating. And hopefully it kind of gives you some ideas for how you might want to set this up in your car. You don't have to do everything I do, and some of you will probably disagree with some of the things that I do because that's just how it works. But you can let me know in the comments all you want what you like or don't like, or kind of what you think about what I'm doing here. So over here, if you look on the dashboard, so one of the first things I did is I have a 3D printer. So it took me a while to design this, but I designed a rack here that holds all the radio control heads. And it goes, and the way it operates is it hooks into the vents here. So obviously this is a very bespoke, singular solution just for my car, but that's kind of what I had to do. So this whole thing comes in 2 pieces. It screws together there because I had to do it in parts to make it so that it would fit on the printer bed. I was actually kind of proud of myself for what I came up with for this FTM 500 because they don't, if any of you have bought one, you know that Yaesu doesn't sell an adapter plate for this control head. What you can get is just something that screws into the back, but that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted something where I could actually, pull it off of just like a regular control head as if the radio were there. And so I took some time to do a lot of careful measurements and come up with something that it would actually lock into there. And so it does. There it is. It'll actually move the camera around a lot here, but it will actually lock right into that as if it was locked into the radio. Kind of takes 2 hands because I haven't gotten it perfect, but there you go. So there's that. And then I have over here another plate that I made that holds the control head for the FT891. So I have the control head for the FT891, and it's nice. I can just keep it right here in the center console. And so from to hook the 891 up, I take I've learned that I get a little bit less thumping in the headphone jack if I use this ferrite core on the control cable. And then there's another trick I do to get rid of the rest of the thumping, or most of it, that I learned from a commenter. So thank you, on one of my previous videos about how to do that. So anyway, you just plug this in. Nothing special going on there. I learned that, at least if you're 3D printing, the tabs here are good enough for holding it in. I originally did a very elaborate system to use the same clip-on locking mechanism and everything, but actually a friction fit is plenty for this to just lock into these grooves and notches. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in me posting this control head adapter on my Thingiverse account. I'm not interested in running a 3D printing business, so I won't be able to 3D print one for you. But anyhow, this all starts up like normal, but I'm not going to turn it on yet until I put the antenna on. So looking at the window here, you can see that there's a mount for the ADAS 120 out there on my hood. There aren't a lot of great spots on the Subaru to mount an antenna without having to drill into things, but there is one thing that's nice about the Subaru as far as mounting an antenna on the hood, and I'm going to show you that really quickly here. I always feel weird when I'm out at a public place and I pop the hood on my car, because it makes me feel like maybe people think I'm broken down or something, and I would never want to be so embarrassed in that way. But this is just a regular diamond mount. Everyone's seen it. It's a really good mount. Nothing hugely special going on there. And then if you look under here, I've got a wire hooked up to the battery, and the mount is mounted right there. This hood is luckily made out of aluminum, and that means that I could scrape away paint underneath without worrying about it rusting, because aluminum doesn't rust that way. But I have to put dielectric grease, or this time I have anti-corrosive grease, but I have to reapply that grease. I've learned every couple of weeks, even though I scraped away all the paint there and everything, it's still, that connection gets bad, and I'll know that I'll need to replace the grease when the antenna has a hard time tuning, especially on 40 meters. So if your ADAS is like not staying in tune and it's jumping around and it's misbehaving, that's usually what's happening, is you're having trouble getting a good ground connection. So I always have to put the dielectric grease on that to make it work better. And then I ran everything through this front quarter panel. And I didn't get too fancy. Here's the antenna wire, and here's the power wire for everything. This is a piece of 10 gauge wire. You only need a positive line. You can find a ground against the body. The body is negative. And that just runs under the front seat here. There's nothing special going on. And the radio, the FT891, is sitting under the front seat. I'm gonna go back here. I pulled this out so that you could see. This is I 3D printed a big plate to put all of this on. And in here, I've got two rails. This is the whole power control system. So I've got a positive rail here, and then the ground rail there. And then here's a voltage sensing relay. And its job is it detects when the voltage in the radio, it detects when the voltage from the car goes over 13.8, and it turns on. So that's how I know that the alternator is running. And then I have it set to go to the PowerWorks battery charger that's just back here. And what that does is when this turns on, it clicks this relay over. So this relay, on the normally closed section of this relay, I have it going to the LFP auxiliary battery in the back of the car, which I'm going to show you in a second. And then when this voltage sensitive relay turns on, it clicks this relay to the normally open side. The normally open side then closes, and it flips this entire positive rail here. That rail clicks over to running off of the alternator, and that powers the radios. So, and then it goes to this little distribution that I made right here, which also runs a little USB adapter, so I can keep my phone charging while I'm using it to log in the car without the engine running. So that was a big advantage, that I can log without the engine running. And then it also has, it's hard to see, but I've got the VHF radio underneath the other seat, but they all run off of this little distribution channel, which is a voltage sensitive relay, and then another separate relay so that I can click things over. And then it comes out to this piece of 10 gauge, no, I think it's 12 gauge wire. By the way, this is all fused. I have a 30 amp fuse at the battery, and then I have another 30 amp fuse right here. I like fuses. So this comes up, and this is just a piece of like PowerWorks zip cord, and I just ran it under the seat. And then back here, that all goes to this 50 ampere hour battery. I also have a 12 ampere hour battery. I could run that off of it too. I just plug it into power poles. I never intend to draw more than 30 ampere hours. Excuse me. I never plan to draw more than 30 amps from this battery. So these will be fine, these smaller power pole connectors. This is never going to run a heavier load than that. I don't want to do that. That requires even more work than I've done on the electrical system. It requires building a more robust system, and I don't want to do that. I keep the ADAS here in the back of the car most of the time because it's really not necessary to keep it. I don't like driving with it. I've tried operating HF while driving, and it's horrible. It's just horrible. Maybe you're better at focusing than I am. I can't do it. I can't multitask that way because I got to drive, and I can't drive and like carefully operate that VFO knob while paying attention to traffic. So I don't want to run over a kid or something like that because I'm playing with HF radio. That just seems foolish. So I just come out here, screw this on. The nice thing about this is, it's not like this is exactly discrete, having this antenna screwed into your car and out there where everybody can see it, but it's a whole lot less attention grabbing than when I have the 17-foot whip running off of the roof of the car. So, for times that I really don't want to attract attention, like I just want to activate the park, I don't want to be an ambassador for parks on the air, this is great. Also, the weather is very unstable today, so it'll be raining off and on, windy off and on. It's 45 degrees out there according to my car. That's cold. So anyway, this little cap that goes on the thing goes right there. And there you go. That's the whole mobile HF setup that I've come up with. So let me show you. I can turn it on. Here we go. So radio turns on. No surprises there. And then of course I have a little speaker right here, just an external speaker right there. But I can also run headphones, which is really helpful. So here's my paddle. These are just paddles that I built myself. I don't mount them inside the car. There's just not enough space to do that. Like a pickup truck would be really good for that, right? There's usually spaces where people can do that in a truck, or I could have like a steering wheel table or something. But what I figured out works is just to take this thing, and I've got this Velcro strap attached to it, and I just Velcro it to my leg. And that actually puts it in a more convenient location for activating from the car anyway. So I prefer that. That's just one thing I discovered by accident. I keep the microphone right there. You need to have it because it helps you adjust the antenna when it needs it. Let me turn that down. I always put the radio on 6 meters and then hit tune to pull the antenna all the way down before I take it off, because I want the antenna to be in its shortest position when I throw it in the back of the car. That's my only complaint about the ADAS 120, honestly, is that I wish that whip were detachable, because the ADAS is set up as if you're just always leaving it on the car, and I don't want to always leave it on the car. A, because it's just, I don't use it while driving anyway, and then B, because it's a target for theft. I don't know that, thieves don't necessarily know what it is, but it doesn't matter. That's not like thieves sit there and think about what they're stealing before they steal it. They see it looks expensive. That and just, it shakes around a lot out there. That's not a great mounting spot. I would love to figure out a better mounting scheme for the car, and I might at some time in the future. This is just what I'm doing for now. Okay, so now I have let me show you what I hook up the paddle with. So then this cable goes back to the radio. And yeah, I can run the key, and then all of this just operates like you'd expect it to. So here we are. I'm going to show you that, I guess I'll prove to you that this can tune on 40 meters. So you hit the tune button, and after you hit the tune button, and I've shown this before in other videos, the ADAS moves, it starts doing its tuning thing, and the radio shows you whether it's in tune or not. I think this is probably flickering a lot, but that's okay. You'll be able to get an idea of what's happening. Okay, so there you go. 1.5 to 1 on 40 meters isn't bad. To preempt the question about whether it works as well as a full end-fed half wave, no, the answer is no, of course it doesn't. Like, not even close. On 40 meters, I think I did a comparison between just the ADAS and even a loaded 17-foot whip, and it was like 3 S units down. But, like, it's the difference between being able to activate from the car or not when the weather's horrible or when you've got limited mobility, like I did a few weeks ago before, when I was on crutches. So I wouldn't say it's not a problem for me. I think it's fine. It's obviously better and more efficient the higher up you go. So that once you're up on the 10 meters, it's not that bad of an antenna. Since it's there, I'll just turn on the FTM 500, which is usually running when I'm driving. And sometimes I run APRS on it. Sometimes I just I'm monitoring a repeater and the calling frequency. I've been happy with it. I bought the FTA 500 solely because it has the speaker in the head unit. That was the number one selling point, was having that speaker in the head unit. And I'm happy with it for that reason. Basically, I was paying an extra $200 over the price of a different dual band transceiver to get a speaker. And I'd do it again. It's worth $200 for me to clean that whole system up. But as far as all the other functions, it's a radio. A radio's a radio. I mean, it's, it does cool stuff. I don't know. I've played with the APRS, and sure, the APRS is great. But that's a digression. That's my setup. That's how I got the FT891 with the ADAS 120 mostly permanently installed in my Subaru so that I can use them at any time and I'm not taking up space in the seat, and I can just I do sometimes, like I said, I usually take that off, but sometimes I will drive around with it and I can just go straight into a park, activate it discreetly. Nobody knows I did it. And then, except of course my chasers, they know that I activated, but the neighbors don't have to know. The other people at the park don't have to know. I don't have to make a spectacle out of myself, and then I just move on. That's my mobile setup. I'm happy with it. It works pretty well. I hope that gave you some ideas. 7.3, get out there, go play with your radio.